the grants, and I own Cure My Credit Scores. And what we do is we help clients get their scores up to a 700 or greater in a short amount of time. We're really big on education, and so you guys are really, really in a good spot. So tonight, I'm going to start off by going over how your credit score works, right? So let me share my screen.
The presentation is awesome. Just that little bit that you showed us made me even want to come back and see it again.
Did you, can you see my screen where it says understanding your credit?
Yes.
And we're good to go.
Perfect. All right. So let's go over how your credit score works. Your credit score, it's a 3-digit number ranging from 350 to 850. It comes from a complex equation called FICO. And you really have to be a PhD in math to break down FICO. So we break it down into these 5 categories so that you can really understand how it works. The first category is payment history. Now this has to do with how you pay your bills. So anything negative like late payments, charge-offs, collections, foreclosures, bankruptcies, anything negative goes into this 35%. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing the letters to dispute those negative items on your credit report. Anything that is put on your credit report can be removed from your credit report, okay? So it really doesn't matter if it really is your medical bill, or if it's not your medical bill, or if you paid it, or if you haven't paid it, it doesn't matter. We will dispute it and try to get it off. The way we're getting things off is we're using the law. We're using the law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It literally says that everything on your credit report has to be 100% accurate, reporting timely information, and verifiable. So a lot of times they just throw things on your credit report, but they don't follow the rules on how to keep it on your credit report. So it's kind of like if you ever were pulled over for speeding, if the cop doesn't fill out everything on that ticket correctly, when you go into to dispute it, you can get it off because it wasn't filled out correctly. Even if they spell your name wrong, it can come off. Same thing with your credit report. Everything has to be correct. And a lot of times they don't do that. So when we dispute it, we're trying to get it removed from your credit report. We're not saying that you paid it or that it wasn't yours or anything like that. We're trying to figure out what was wrong because there's so many mistakes on your credit report. So that's how we're getting items off. So it's real important to understand the way we get items off is we're getting them off of your credit report. We are not erasing your debt. So for example, I had a client that we got a T-Mobile bill off. It was like, I think it was like $1,700 T-Mobile bill, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
We call it.
I know that. You know why? Because when you cancel, they add the rest of the year on, and sometimes it can add up like that. Yeah. They had like a $1,700 T-Mobile bill. We got that removed, and then you saw something on television for T-Mobile. He went down and got another T-Mobile account. Now they know the law just as much as we know the law. So all they said is, well, you have to just pay $5 so that we can X out this account in our system so we can get you a new T-Mobile, right? Because he paid that $5, they were able to update it, $5 less than the balance, and put it back on the credit report. So the rule of thumb is once we get items removed, you want to just leave them alone. Unless it's a company that you want to do business with again, or you hit the lottery, you just want to pay. But the goal is for it to come off your credit report so that it is no longer stopping you from buying a house or buying a car or just living your life. So that's how we're getting items off your credit report. Now, 35% of your score also has to do with the good positive payment history. So when you're paying your student loans on time, or you're paying your car note on time, or your credit cards on time, it positively affects this 35%, okay? Now, 30% of your score, this has to do with your credit cards, okay? This is only your credit cards. So if you don't have any credit cards, it automatically means that you're missing out on this 30%. It's kind of like if you were in class and the teacher said the final exam is worth 30%, you could do well in every other part of the class, but if you miss the final exam, the most you can get is a 70, is a C. Same thing with your credit. You cannot get A+ credit unless you have credit cards. So It's not just about having credit cards. You have to keep the balance low. And if you don't have credit cards or you don't think you can get credit cards, I know where to go and when to go so I can help you get credit cards. So let's say you did have a credit card and you had a $1,000 credit card. You spent $500 on this $1,000 credit card. You would be at 50% utilization of this card. Anytime you're above 30% utilization, it hurts your credit. When you're below 30% utilization, it helps your credit. So when you're over 30%, the closer you are to the limit, the more it hurts your credit. So if you were at $1,000 on a $1,000 limit, it's almost as bad as having a bankruptcy. That's how much it hurts your credit when you were over the limit on your credit card. Okay.
Wow.
So you want to be way under 30% so you can get to those good credit scores. We recommend that you keep your cards at all times between 1 and 10% of the limit. So 1% would be $10, 10% would be $100 on a $1,000 credit card. I know that seems crazy, right? Everyone's like, why would I have a credit card if I can't even really use it, right? So in their mind, they think that if you are only using a little bit of the limit, that you are not dependent on this money, and that in their mind, you're a good creditor because you don't have to use the whole limit to float you throughout the month. That's how they think. So you want to keep the cards very low. So 10% would be $100. Now, I know that seems low, but you can actually be too low on your credit card. Anytime you're below 1%, it becomes neutral. It's kind of like you're not even using the card. They don't give you any points. I've seen credit scores drop 50 points because people paid their cards all the way down to 0.
Wow.
I had a quick question. Do they add the credit up so every debt that you have is now 30%, or is it 30% each individual card?
Very great question. So they look at each card individually and they look at all the cards collectively. Okay. So when they come up with this equation and comes up with your scores, they are looking at each card individually and they're looking at all of them collectively at the same time. So you want to keep your cards low, and I'm going to explain a little bit more into that in 1 second. You want to keep your cards low, but not too low. Anytime they're below 1%, it becomes neutral. It's kind of like you're not even using the card. I've seen people's scores drop 50 points because they paid their cards all the way down to 0. Now, a lot of people are like, why would you lose points by paying it down to 0, right? So let's say they gave you an extra 30 points because you had your card at 10%, right? And they gave you an extra 50 points because you had it at 1%, right? So 1% would be like $10 or $11. You had it at 1%. Now, once you go under that 1%, it becomes neutral. So they're not giving you points anymore. So you would lose that 50 extra points that you got for keeping it that low once it's under 1%. So right now, when you're trying to buy a house, you want to play this credit game. Now that you know how much the credit cards are affecting you and the balances are, the best way to play it is to keep the balances at all times between 1 and 10%. Now, all times does mean all times. A lot of people think, okay, I just charge it up to $500 and then I'll pay it down to $100 before the bill is due and I'll be fine. The problem with that is you do not know when they're going to report the limit and the balance to the credit bureaus. Just because you pay your bill on the 15th of each month doesn't mean that that's when they report it to the credit bureaus. It is way above, even if you call in to your credit card and say, when are you reporting to the credit bureaus? The people who answer the phone, it's way above their pay grade when they report it to the credit bureaus. So you don't want to play Russian roulette with your credit card. While you're in the process of buying, you just keep your cards between 1 and 10%. Do not charge it over 10%. And honestly, just keep it real, real low. Because even if you looked on your credit report and you saw for the last, 3 months, they've been reporting on the 17th, next month they could report on the 20th. You don't know. So that's why I'm saying while you're in this process, you always want to keep your cards between 1 and 10% because you never know when they're going to report it to the credit bureaus. Now, to go back to that question again about do they look at each card individually? So, no, I'm going to answer that right after this. I'm going to
Okay.
another trick after this. Okay, So 15% of your score is your average age of FICO. This looks at how old your credit is. So it looks at all of your open accounts. Anytime an open account is older than 7 years, it positively affects this 15%. When it's younger than 7 years, it doesn't really help it. So that's what we tell people, never to close cards, credit cards. You want to keep credit cards open for as long as possible. The older your credit is, that's how you get to the 800 scores. When your collective age is older than 7 years, that's how you're able to get to those 800 scores, okay? Now, when you finish paying off your auto loan, let's say you paid your auto loan for 4 years. When you finish paying off your auto loan, that account closes and you will lose that 4 years of good credit history, right?
Really?
Yeah. When you finish paying off your student loan after, what, 70 years? When you finish paying off your student loan, that account closes and you lose those 20 years of good payment history. The only time an account won't close when you pay it off is your credit cards. So that's why we tell you never to close credit cards. The older your cards are, that's how you get to the 800 scores. Now they look at cards collectively and individually, right? So it's your average age of file. So it looks at them collectively and individually, right? So everybody goes to Credit Karma, right? Credit Karma is a good way of figuring out Credit Karma is good because it also sends you alerts when like something new shows up on your credit report and stuff like that. But sometimes they give out information that isn't true. So you just want to be wary. Credit Karma is good. I have Credit Karma. Most of my clients have Credit Karma. I can't use Credit Karma to do the credit repair because it only shows 2 credit scores, and I need to be able to fix all 3 credit scores. So going back to Credit Karma, it might tell you, sometimes it will tell you your average age of file, how old your credit is collectively. Sometimes they're incorrect. So that's why I'm like, sometimes it's incorrect. So let me explain how you can figure out what your average age of file is, right? So this is another side piece about Credit Karma. Credit Karma gets paid by you applying for credit cards. Credit Karma's only business is that you apply for credit cards or loans using their site. So they are always going to suggest that you get another credit card to raise your score. Every time you do that simulation, the best solution is get another credit card.
Right.
And sometimes that's not the best solution.
Yeah, because they're always telling me, we recommend this credit card for you. I didn't ask you to help me with my shopping habits. I mean, thank you, but no.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that is how they get paid. They get a kickback on every time you apply using their system, right? And that's why it's free. So yeah. So.
And they tell you that, all right, you had this percentage, get this credit card, this will bring your percentage down to X, Y, and it will raise you up 20 points or something.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So when you're trying to buy a house, I'm saying this because the majority of the people who are listening to this are in the process of buying a house, right? If you're not, if you're not in the process of buying a house, then go ahead and apply for as many credit cards as you want. But if you are in the process of buying a house, applying for too many credit cards can actually hurt your score. So let me explain how that works, right? So your average age of file, which is worth 15% of your score. This looks at anytime your average age of file is older than 7 years, it gives you 15, it positively affects 15% of your score. When it's under 7 years, it doesn't really help as much, right? So let's say you have one credit card, right? And that credit card is 10 years old, right? And that's the only open line of credit you have on your credit report. That means that your credit is 10 years old, right? Now, if you get another credit card, right? It's a brand new credit card. I'm just going to make the numbers even so it makes sense, right? You get another credit card, that would be a 1 year old credit card, right? Or a 0 year old credit card, right? So what they do now is they average it out. So now you have a 1 month old credit card and a 10-month-old credit card, I mean, a 10-year-old credit card, they're going to average these 2 times out. And your credit scores, I'm sorry, your age of file will drop down to 5 years old.
What?
Did I? Were you about to ask a question or say something?
No, I said I couldn't really believe that.
Yes. So I've had plenty of people say, oh, I got another credit card and my scores dropped. So if your credit on average is younger than 7 years, then it's okay to get another credit card. But if you have an older credit card, you might not want to get another credit card until after you buy your house, so you don't drop your scores, okay?
So Bonita, that leads actually to a question that just popped up that says, even though your credit card balances are at 30% or below, how many credit cards are too many? Yikes.
So remember, you want your credit cards to be between 10% and 1%. I hear everyone always says 30%. 30% is neutral. It's not helping you or hurting you. 30% basically is like you not having a credit card. You want to think automatically to go to 10%, right? So how many cards is too many, right? If you can handle it, like, it's up to you. But it depends on what you see. I already have my house, right? So I already own my house. I'm not trying to buy another house today or this week. So, but I have, last time I counted, I think I have over 20, close to 30 credit cards.
Oh, wow.
I have, in my personal credit, I have close to $180,000 in personal credit. And in my business credit, I have $230,000.
That's a job in itself.
Exactly. But I set up everything for automatic pay. I don't play.
But one thing she said made a good point. It depends on if you're buying a house or not. Like Bonita, she's already in a house, and
yes, it depends on. Yeah, and so my average age of file is like 9 months. You know, like it's, my oldest credit card I think is like 18 years old. But because I have so many credit cards, my I'm not in the 800s. So I'm in the high 7s, but I'm not in 800s because I have too many credit cards. I'll be like 60 before I'm in the 800s. So what I was saying about, so this goes back to adding credit to reduce your debt, your debt ratio, right? So we talked about getting another credit card to reduce your debt ratio. Now, if you're already under 7 years old, then that's fine, right? So let's say you have a $10,000 credit card and you're using 50%, right? And then you want to do something where you get another $10,000 credit card and you transfer half of the balance over to the new credit card, so that both cards are now below, would be at 25% as opposed to 50%. That definitely could work. But the problem is when you're at 50%, a lot of times your scores are too low to even get another card. So it's crazy. Like, the thing is, it's like, you know, when you need the money or you need the credit, you know, they don't give it to you. You have to look like you don't need it, like, meaning you're not using much of your credit cards and stuff like that for you to get more credit. So that's why I have so many credit cards, because I like to use credit. I fly for free. I stay in hotels for free. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love the points, but I know that I can only keep my cards at like 10%. So I have to have multiple cards to you know, get all the points. But
too bad they don't come with instructions.
What'd you say?
I said, too bad the credit cards don't come with instructions.
Like
no, it's on purpose. It is definitely on purpose that they don't explain this to anybody, because they don't want certain people to know.
I have a question, Bonita. I have a question. What if you have a credit card, but you don't use it or haven't used it in a while? Does it affect your credit?
Yes, it does. So remember we talked about if it's under 1%, it doesn't help your credit. Now this only has to do with cards you can use anywhere, okay? So store cards like Macy's or a gas card, you can keep those, like Victoria's Secret, you can keep those at a zero balance. Cards that you can use anywhere, like your Visas, your American Expresses, the ones that you can use anywhere, you want to keep the balance between 1% and 10%. Now, if a lot of people are like, well, my grandmother has an 800 credit score and she pays her cards down to zero each month, you know, whenever your credit card is older than 7 years, at that point they trust you and you can pay your cards down to zero. But when it's younger than 7 years, they're testing you every single month to see if you're using the card, if you're using a little bit of the card. And so, yes, if your card is younger than 7 years and it's a card that you can use anywhere, you do want to charge a little bit on it. Maybe your Netflix bill or something like that, so that it stays with a balance. All right. Okay, so 10% of your score, we went over average age of file. Oh, one more thing with average age of file. One of the hacks, one of the ways that you can boost your credit really quickly, is if you know somebody, like a family member or a friend, someone you know, don't go with someone you don't know, someone you know that pays down their credit card or keeps their credit card balance very low, they've never had any late payments, and the older that credit card, the better. Like, let's say you have, your mom has a credit card that's 20 years old, she keeps the balances low. What she could do is she can add you as an authorized user. That beautiful credit history, just that one card, will show up on your credit report with all those 20 years of positive history, the balance low, and it could jump your scores like crazy, right? So remember, it'll be 20 years of positive history, so that helps this 35% here. Because she keeps the balances low, it would help this 30% here. And because the card is older than 7 years, it would help this 15%. So one good authorized user account can help 80% of your score. I've seen people's scores jump 50 to 100 points by having a good authorized user. Now, the opposite is true too. If they charge too much on that card or they get a late payment, right, then it's going to affect 80% of your score. So that's why it should be someone you trust. Yes. And remember, you want them to have the balance closer to 10%. 30% again is neutral. It's not going to help you. So you want them to keep the balance low. All right, so that's one of the good hacks. Oh, one other thing is, you can let them know that nothing from your credit will show up on their credit. So people be like, oh, I'm not adding you because you're not going to mess up my credit, right? Nothing from your credit will show up on their credit. And also, the credit card, when you're being added as an authorized user, there will be a credit card that is mailed to that person's house, right, with your name on it. You tell them, just cut the credit card up, right? There will never be a way for you to call in and be like, Discover, can you mail it to my address instead of my mom's address? They don't do that. So you can let them know that you'll never use the card, right? You just want to help boost your credit.
Would you suggest doing that for your kids?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I just had a client, one of my clients asked me that question, right? How can I set up my daughter, right? So I told her what to do. I told her to add her to the oldest credit card you have. And I think her daughter is 18 going to college, right? So she called me yesterday and she told me the daughter was like, I just pulled my credit and thank you, da, 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 da. My credit score is a 740. 18 years old, her first credit score is a 740. And so I explained to her, and so then she got her own credit card. And this is tricky because you're adding, it depends on, so the mom added her to a $12,000 credit card that was like 25 years old, right? So we were able to get the daughter her own credit card. A lot of times what these banks want to do, well, this is before COVID. Since COVID, they're a little bit less or whatever. But what the banks usually want to do is they want to see your highest limit credit card that's showing up on your credit report, your highest limit, and they want to either match that or go over that so that you use their credit card, right? So if you, like before COVID, I think her credit, I think it was 15,000 or something. It was like in the teens, right? So if you apply for a credit card and you have an authorized user that has like a $15,000 credit card on your credit report, most likely that new credit card company, that new bank will give you either a $15,000 credit card or like a 20,000, something higher, so that you want to use their card. So long story short, this little 18-year-old first credit card was a $5,000 credit card.
Wow.
Yes. So
Wow.
so I had a long conversation with her because her mom was like, Benita, can you talk to her about that? Because I really wanted her to understand that the bank did not give you $5,000. The bank gave you $500 to play with. $500 to play with, not $5,000. He was like, yeah, I just charged $2,000 last month or no, or last week or something like that. Because she's about to she just got accepted to college and she wanted to put all her books on it and da 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 da. And I said, okay, I just really want you to pay this down and I need you to keep it at $500 because again, we're talking about setting up our kids to win. We're talking about, changing this generational bad credit stuff, right? So we really got to look at all of our credit cards automatically at that 10%. You get a $5,000 limit, you want to look at it like a $500 card. So that 2 reasons, right? So you can have good credit and keep good credit. And the second reason is if something happens and you're on the hook for $500, that's easier to handle than if you're on the hook for $5,000, right? And our world just changed, you know what I mean? Like things happen, right? So you just want to be, credit is just trying to see if you're responsible, right? That's the whole background. And in their mind, they feel like you're responsible if you're keeping the balance low. I went off on a tangent. I don't even know where we're at, but I hope I'm giving good information.
That was definitely good information.
It's a lot of great information, yes.
Okay, so we're going to go to 10% of your score has to do with your mix of credit. New creditors want to see that you can handle all different types of credit. So you really want to have a good mix. A good mix is 2 major credit cards, 1 department store card, like that's a card that you can only use at that store, and then 1 installment account. An installment account is like a car loan, a student loan, or mortgage. So at minimum, you want to have 2 major credit cards, 1 department store card, and 1 installment account.
So Bonita, thank you for saying that. So Donnell, Bonita just said I could get a department store to have a good mix of credit. So thank you.
She said that's what you should have. She didn't say go out and get it.
So at minimum. Now, if you have 2 major credit cards, you don't have to get a department store card. But usually they want when you're building credit, you usually start off with a department and then you move to a major credit. But if you already have like 2 or 3 major credit cards, Ms. Keller, you're all set.
And actually, we have a question that came in on that. Somebody wants to know what credit card companies are best for rebuilding credit.
Very good question. So when you're starting off, and you don't have any positive credit, like all of your credit cards, or you don't have any credit cards, or the credit cards you have are closed or in collections or something like that, you have to start off with something easy, right? So you want to start off building your credit with either a finger hut, finger like your hands, hut like a house, fingerhut.com. Everybody's mom or grandma have finger hut.
They still around? My mom bought stuff from them. Wow.
Yeah. So Fingerhut is a good starter company because they basically give credit to almost everybody who hasn't messed it up with them yet. Okay. So you go to Fingerhut, you apply, and then you have to do like, they give you like this fresh start program where they give you anywhere between $150 to $250. Even though they give you $250, remember, I need you to stay between $50 and $60. Don't spend more than $60. Because you have to spend at least $50 when you're doing their fresh start program, and you really don't need to go above $60. I know plenty of people that want to spend the whole $250. Remember, we're using this to build our credit, so you want to keep it low. Fingerhut is a good starter. If you can't do Fingerhut, then you can do a secured credit card, right? So you give the bank secured credit card. How that works, you're securing the credit with cash. Because your credit is not good enough yet, you cannot get an unsecured credit card. So you get a secured credit card where you secure your credit with cash. So you give the bank $200 or $300, depending on which one you do. I like Capital One. If you don't have a collection in Capital One, I suggest you use Capital One because they only do it for $200. You give the bank $200. They give you, after a year of you using the credit correctly, they give you back the $200. So it's like a deposit of $200. And then they give you a $200 credit card. Remember, just because you gave them $200, you don't have $200 to work with. You're only going to spend between $2 and $20 on this credit card, between 1 and 10%. So it's the same rules. You have to keep the balance between $2 and $20 at all times. Because this card is such a low limit card, you really, really have to monitor it. So honestly, I suggest you to buy like coffee once a month, right? A lot of people are like, oh, okay, I'll just put my gas on this card. Problem with it is, if you're only spending $20 in gas a month, that's fine. But you can't put your gas on it every time you go to the store because it's going to add up, right? So let's say you buy coffee and the coffee is $10, right? Because that's how much coffee is now. I don't know why. So let's say you buy coffee and it's $10, and let's say the bill is due on the 15th, right? You leave the $10 on there. On the 14th, you pay it off, so you're not late, right? And then the next day, you charge it back $10. So it doesn't stay at a zero balance for longer than a day. The goal is to always keep a small balance on the credit card.
You got
So
to
yeah,
pretty much put it in your calendar. Hey, you pay it off and then charge it back again on this date.
exactly. Yeah. And you can actually just charge it back the same day too. If you, just the goal is not to have a balance of zero longer than a day. Cool.
Okay.
So the last part is your inquiries. Anytime anyone pulls your credit report, causes a hard inquiry. Inquiries stay in your score for 2 years. They stay in your credit report for 2 years, but it's only the ones that happen in the last 6 months that can negatively affect this 10%. So the rule of thumb is try not to have more than 6 inquiries in a 6-month period, and you'll be fine with this 10%. We work on all 5 categories at the same time, and that's how we're able to get people's scores to a 700 or greater. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to go over before we open it up for questions. Okay, the cost of bad credit, right? A lot of times, so let's go over how much it costs to have not so great credit, right? So this, we took these numbers from 2019, right? So let's say person A has a 730 credit score, person B has a 599 credit score, so right below 600, right? So person A buys this beautiful brand new Toyota for $23,000 with a 66-month payment plan, right? So they're buying it with an interest rate of 1.99. That is so real. I have an interest rate of 1.99. You can get a 1.99 interest rate. With a 730, 1.99, they're paying $368 a month on this car. In the whole 66-month period, they're going to be paying $1,302 in interest payments. So for this $23,000 car, they will be paying $24,000 for it, right? Person B has a 599. They're being offered an interest rate of 14.99. That is generous. A lot of time when you have a 599 credit score, your interest rate is looking at 20 to 25% interest rate.
Because I have someone that had a 20-something%. I was like, you crazy. You want that car that bad?
Yeah, and it's real. And they'll say, oh, no credit or no money down or a dime down or whatever that means, and we'll just charge you 3 times for the car, right? So long story short, 14% 14.99% interest means that they're paying $513 for this same car. They'll be paying $10,000 over the course of 66 months extra on this car. This $23,000 car will cost them $33,000. Now, the other underlying thing about this is that a lot of times, even though they say 14% interest, they put the interest in the beginning of the loan. So you're paying $513 a month. Maybe $13 of that is going towards the principal of the car, the actual car, and the other $500 is going towards the loan. The problem with that is every time they put people in these horrible interest rates, they say this. They say, don't worry, you can refinance in a couple of months to a better interest rate. The problem with that is your credit score is going to be ready in a couple of months? Will you have a job in a couple of months? Who knows, right? COVID, like what, or the other problem is, will this car even be worth that money in a couple of months? I have so many clients that are in this situation. They try to refinance after having the car for 6 months and they can't refinance. The reason why is because the car is no longer worth the amount that they're paying. So if you have a loan for $23,000 and you try to refinance in 6 months and that car is now only worth $20,000, because when you drive it off the lot, it automatically depreciates. Now the car is only worth $20,000. The bank is going to say, well, I need $3,000 before I refinance you. So you just want to be very careful, because a lot of places may say, yes, you can get this car or whatever, but they're going to charge you. You're going to pay for it in the long run. And the same thing with your credit. You want to get your house with the highest possible credit, so that you're paying less for the house.
Awesome.
And when you're looking at this credit score at 730 and 599, when it comes to a car, are they just looking at the scores, or are they also looking at the amount of time that you had your credit, like we talked about earlier?
No, they're looking at the scores that they pulled. And the scores that they pulled, it does factor in how long you've had your credit. But no, they're not actually looking at the report. So the young 18-year-old that I just told you about that has a 740, no, they would take that 740 and give her a car. So they wouldn't even know that she's only had this credit for a month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, no. They just look at the scores. So going back to scores, let's talk about scores, right? Because a lot of people got questions about scores. Well,
We got some
why
questions
look like this? Why I look like that?
Yeah, we
because
got.
I was trying hard to get to an 800, but now I know I ain't gonna get there because I haven't had anything for 10 years.
Yeah, and the 800 thing, when you're above a 700, you get approved for everything. I think there was only one thing I heard you had to have an 800 credit score to get, and I think to have a McDonald's franchise, you have to have an 800.
Really?
And everybody likes Chick-fil-A now anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Is that shade you're throwing, Bunny?
So yeah, because I don't need no 800, but long story short, as long as you're above a 700, you're winning the game. So let's talk about your scores. A lot of people are like, okay, my Credit Karma score says I'm at a 700, but when I go to the loan officer, it says that I'm at a 670. Why is my score so different, right? FICO is the company that comes up with these credit scores. FICO comes up with equations that calculate the credit scores. FICO comes up with different equations every year, right? And one of the ways that they make money, FICO makes money, is that they sell these equations to banks. Now, banks may switch up their equation. They may buy a new equation after COVID, and they're like, okay, we need higher scores or we need lower scores. It depends on their shareholders. It depends on a whole bunch of stuff on what type of equation they buy for that bank. So there are different FICO equations for each industry. So there's equations for credit cards, There's equations for car loans and equations for mortgages, right? A late payment on a car note is going to affect an equation with the car note, the car equations, more than it will affect your credit card equation or your mortgage equation. A late payment or collection with an apartment building is going to affect your mortgage score more than it affects your credit card score. So it depends on what equation and what industry you're using. Now, like I said before, I think I said, yes, we talked about Credit Karma. Credit Karma is your credit card score. That is why they're always pushing credit cards, right? Your credit card score is usually an easier score. The reason why is they're trying to figure out if you can handle anywhere between $300 and $30,000. When they're looking at a mortgage score, they're trying to see if you can handle anywhere between 50,000 and $1 million. So they're going to weigh things more heavily when it comes to a mortgage score. The best way to find out what your mortgage score is to have the mortgage company pull your credit report. Now, your credit report with that mortgage company is only your credit report with that mortgage company. You can, only when it comes to mortgages, you have a period where it's a shopping around period, right? Where you're allowed to go to different mortgage companies within a 2-week time frame and shop around. If you decide to do that, you will see that your scores in each different mortgage company could be different because they're using different equations. So you cannot bring your Navy Federal credit scores to, SunTrust Bank and say, I'm a 720 here. They can't do anything with Navy Federal scores because they're using their own equation that was approved by their boss's boss, boss's boss's boss. Okay?
So regardless of what your score is, when they pull it, it has to go through an equation so that they can score it themselves.
Yes, they can only use the equation. They can only use the FICO scores that they pull.
Awesome. We have some questions coming up. One of the questions that came up is, if you're not using Credit Karma, what other credit reports do you suggest, or they're all more or less the same?
I'm gonna put in the feed one to use.
Okay.
The one that I like using is, sorry, where's the feed? Okay, right there.
In the
I
chat.
feel like an old lady. I'm like, where is the chat? Where did it go?
Okay, so while you're typing and
the one I use is called Identity IQ. Identity IQ is really great because it shows all 3 credit reports. And we need to see all 3 credit reports to fix all 3. Identity IQ is like $1 to start, and it's usually like $30 a month. I'm gonna put in my discount code. So it's only like, it's $1 to start, and then it goes down to $21.99 a month. And it's really good because it also offers, I think, $1 million insurance on if your identity is stolen, which happens so often. Yeah. So yeah, I would say Identity IQ is my favorite. And they also, what is the other thing with Identity IQ? It's really easy to read the credit report. The problem is, if you can't read it, what help is it? So Identity IQ is easy to read. And anybody who's in my program, we use Identity IQ.
Awesome. While you're typing that up, we have another question that came in. What's the best way to turn your secure credit card to unsecured credit card?
The bank has to do that, but usually once you have a secured credit card and it's reporting between that 1% and 10%, then your scores are going to be high enough for you to get an unsecured credit card. You just get an unsecured credit card at that point. Then you'll have 2 credit cards.
Awesome. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good one because I was actually going to ask this question. So the young lady beat me to it who typed this question. Why does the creditor drop your balances automatically? Like sometimes your balance is 5,000. After a few years, they may drop it to like 4,700. Why does that happen?
You mean your limit? Drop your limit.
Drop your limit. Yes, your credit limit. Yes.
I'm about to say which credit is dropping your limit? I need to know who's paying my bill. Okay, no, the limit. Reason why they drop your limit, right? Very good question. Look at these good questions.
Yeah, they coming up with these bomb questions.
I know, making me think. Okay, so whenever you apply for a credit card, you know how you have to scroll down and down and down, and then you say, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
All of that, it says that they have access to your credit report at any time. Anybody that you get money from, anybody you have a contract, a loan, or a line of credit with, they have access to your credit report in their back office. A lot of times they check every quarter. So every 4 months, they'll go in and they'll check. They're looking for, is there something happening, right? Are they too high on their credit cards? Did their scores go down? Are their credit card balances low? Stuff like that. If your credit scores have gone down, right, you got a late payment or your credit scores have gone down, then they may want to reduce their risk and they will lower their limit down to whatever your balance is right then and there, right? So let's say you had a $10,000 credit card and you're at $6,000, they may lower your limit down to $6,000 so that you're less of a risk to them, right? In their mind, what they're thinking is maybe something's happening. Maybe this person lost their job or got sick or something like that. Let me lower my risk before they charge up my card and can't pay it, okay? Now, anytime, just going on that, right, since we're already here, anytime you're offered a credit card, that company has to take out insurance on whatever they offered you, right? So they offer you $10,000, they have to take out insurance on that $10,000 just in case you default, bankruptcy, or something like that. So they're not on the hook, right? They have to pay for this insurance. So on the other end of that, right, let's say you're not using your credit card, right? And you haven't used this card for 2 years, they may close that credit card because they're not making any money. They're just paying on the insurance and you're not using the card. You're not having a balance or paying interest or something like that. So they could close cards if you're not using them.
Understood. All right.
Yeah.
Will it be the same for them increasing the amount of your credit card?
It's exactly the same. Yes. Acting like I know how to sing. Okay, so yes, when your scores go up, you'll notice that they're going to raise the limits. And they're like, okay, she can handle this money. Let me give her some more. Before you know it, that $10,000 car will turn into $20,000, $30,000. I'm telling you, it's beautiful. Like that's how I have so much. Just keep raising it. And I'm like, come on, keep it coming. You know? Yeah, so yes, it's the opposite too. So when your credit scores go up, when we get items off, when you pay down your credit card, they'll start raising your limits.
Awesome. We have actually a question about inquiries come in. What's the difference between a soft inquiry and a hard inquiry? And how many are you allowed before it actually starts affecting your credit score?
Very good question. A soft inquiry is like when you pull your credit yourself, like using Identity IQ, the one I just sent you, or if you're using Credit Karma or something like that, that's you pulling your credit. Soft pulls do not affect your credit at all. You are allowed to look at your credit. They want you to monitor your credit. Hard inquiries are when a bank pulls your credit, right? So when you're applying for a house or a car or an apartment or a job, those are hard inquiries. You are allowed to have hard inquiries, but they want you to keep it low. They don't want you to be excessive with it. So you really want to have less than 6 inquiries in a 6-month period. Once you're over the 6 inquiries in a 6-month period, then it starts to hurt you. So now there's only one industry where there's a shopping around period, and that's the mortgages, right? So when you are applying for a mortgage, you have 2 weeks to go to as many mortgage companies as you want, loan officers as you want. And it shows up on your credit report as multiple inquiries, but it only affects you as if it's one, okay? That is only with mortgages. When you go and get a car, you know, they may pull your credit 20 times, but it affects your credit like it's been pulled 20 times. So that's why, just going back to the car since we're on it, that's why we always say, when you are trying to get a car, you want to get the loan with your bank, right? Like, let's get the scores up. You go to the bank and then you ask the bank for a loan for a car. The bank is going to give you a check. They'll say, okay, yes, Mr. Taylor, you were approved for $30,000. You can get a $30,000 car. Here's a check for $30,000. Now, you know, when you leave that bank, if you spend the whole $30,000, your monthly payments will be, you know, I don't know, $400 a month, right? And if you spend less, let's say you only spend $15,000, your monthly payments will be this, right? So that's what the bank officer will tell you, exactly what your monthly payments are, right? Then you take this $30,000 check and then you go to the dealership. You take that to the dealership, you find the car you want, and then you can either reduce the check payment or give them the whole $30,000. And it's one inquiry. You already know how much you're spending when you're going to the dealership. The opposite way of doing it is going to the dealership and having them pull your credit report. What they do is they pull your credit and they run it through all of the loan companies that they work with. So if they work with 15 different loan companies, you're going to have 15 different inquiries on your credit report. And that's going to drop your scores, and that's going to hurt you. And then you don't even know what your monthly payments will be. You know, before you know it, you're leaving there with a $50,000 car and spending $800 a month. And you know what I'm saying? You just want to be prepared. And this is how people with good credit and money in the bank do it. They go to their bank and then they go to the dealership.
Yeah.
Most of the time they'll try to give you that second chance credit where your interest rate 24%.
Yeah. And it's a car, and you're like, oh, I got a car. Finally, I was able to get a car. But then 3 months later, when you're paying this $600 bill and the car barely works, you're upset.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. We have another question coming in. If you get behind on credit card payments and they close the account, should you take the time to settle with your original creditor before it's sold to a collection agency?
Yes, you want to catch things before they hit your credit. If you can catch something before it hits your credit, then yes, catch it before it hits your credit. Because once a collection goes on your credit, it can drop your scores anywhere between 40 and 100 points.
Wow.
So yes, try to catch collections before they hit your credit. And then if you're late on a credit card or something like that, I think you can be late up to 150 days before it goes into collection.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's better to try to catch it and get back on a payment plan before it goes into collections, and to let it go into collection. Because remember, when it goes into collections, you lose all those good years of payment.
Oh.
So then your payment history goes down, and your age of file goes down, and the open credit card is no longer open. So it doesn't even affect that 30%. So yeah, you want to try to catch things before they get too bad.
Awesome.
Let me show you. I didn't do any before and afters. Let me do that.
Yeah, because we have about 5 more minutes before we wrap up. I meant to ask you, how about showing some before and afters?
No problem.
Bonita is amazing with what she's been doing for our clients. Yes, we see the babies. You have to show the babies. You always have to show the babies.
Yes, those are my babies. I got another one, but I need to update my picture. But they're cute. I like them, so I'm going to keep them.
Yeah, then we'll be having a different conversation if you don't keep them. So.
Exactly, right? Okay, so this client, okay, so which one is this? Okay, this is Clark. Came in June of last year. When Clark came in, 491. Is this too small? Should I make it bigger?
No, we can see it. It's perfect.
Okay. All right. Came in at a 491 in TransUnion, a 508 in Experian, and a 490 in Equifax. Okay. So 400s. And we were able to write letters to get negative stuff off, and he was able to pay down his credit card. So look at this. That was June 5th. by September 5th, so 3 months into the program, the 490 went to a 694, which is amazing. That's a 200-point jump in 3 months, which is awesome. And the other 508 went to a 678, and the other 490 went to a 675. The reason why I show Clark, because it's pretty amazing. He was able to get a house moving from a 400 credit score to being able to buy a house within 3 months. He was screaming. It was amazing. I love that one. Let me show you Robert. All right, so Robert came in February of this year. Robert came in, he had a 562 in TransUnion, a 546 in Experian, and a 562 in Experian. So the middle score, you remember when you're buying a house, they drop the highest, they drop the lowest, they give you a loan on the middle score. The middle score was a 562. You need a middle score right now of at least a 640 to purchase the house. What do you think, 640, 680? What'd you say, 680 now?
No, some banks are doing,
I'm sorry, you were breaking up. You said?
some banks are doing 660 to 680.
Exactly, yes, exactly. They're changing it every day. Like right now, credit is king. So yes, you want to have the highest possible score. So 662 was the middle score. All right. So that was February. By April, so last month we pulled it again.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that. So we were in the 562, right? 562 to a 675 in TransUnion. And then the other 560 went to a 672. And the other 562 went to a 664. So each score went up 100 to 120 points in each category. So that means that he was able to go and buy the house. These are amazing. These are amazing results. I'm talking about 2 months with him and 3 months with the other one. Let me see, Lofton. All right, Lofton came into the program. Lofton is another one. Came into the program at the end of last year, right? With a 603 in TransUnion, a 603 in Experian, and a 612 in Equifax. A month and a half, no, 2 months in, 603 to 693, 90-point jump. The other 603 to a 696, and then the other one to a 673. So within 2 months, was 4 points away from a 700, which is amazing. Now, I actually do guarantee while you're in the program that you get to a 700 or greater as long as you do your part. Your part is no new negative items. That means no new late payments, no new collections, and you have to keep the credit cards between 1 and 10%. So if you do that, then we guarantee that we can get you to a 700 or greater.
Okay, awesome. And as we're running out of time, I did post Bonita's information in the chat box with how you can get in contact with her. We couldn't get to all the questions, but definitely reach out to her. She has an amazing and a very affordable program. And I love the fact that she does not commit to year-long contracts. She's trying to get you in and out as quickly as possible. So Bonita, I do have one last question. We didn't get the discount code for the Identity IQ.
Oh, you didn't?
No, we got the report, but not the code.
The report?
Yeah. The link for the report?
Yeah, that's the code, the link.
Oh, the link is in there. Okay, great. So that answers somebody's question. So once they use that link, that's automatically the discount code in there.
Yeah, that's the link. Because if you don't use this link, it will be, I think, $30 a month. That link will bring it down to $1 to start and then $21.99 a month. And it's good to do. You need to keep it while you're buying a house. You need to be able to monitor what's happening with your credit.
Awesome. Well, Bonita, this was awesome information. A lot of people are like, thank you. I learned quite a few things tonight. So thank you so much. And thank you for the amazing job that you're doing with our clients. They're all very, very, very satisfied with your service.
Awesome.
We can vouch for you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Definitely. And everyone, I put Bonita's information in the chat. I'll also send out an email with her contact information. And just to let everyone know, because we want to continue to be a resource for information, our next webinar series we're going to have next Wednesday at 1. We are going to talk about short sales. I love short sales personally. I know there are a lot of agents out there who don't like doing them, but we're definitely going to talk about short sales next Wednesday, the 27th of May at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I'll definitely send out a link to anyone who's interested in joining us on that webinar and learning the nuts and bolts about how to successfully negotiate a short sale and get to the closing table. That's my favorite. I love it.
Get to the closing table.
Get to the closing table with a short sale. So Taylor, you have any final words for everyone who took the time out of their day to join us tonight? They could have been anywhere in the world, but they chose to be with us and the credit lady.
Yes. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out. Bonita did share so much information in reference to credit. So I do understand that it's a game. And now you just showed us at least some pointers on how to play the game.
How to play the game.
We do appreciate everybody tuning in, and we do appreciate Bonita and your nuggets that will help everybody get to an 800 score in 10 years.
Well, I love you all. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.